There comes a moment, quiet, undeniable, when you realize the cavalry isn't coming, not from your siblings, not from your children, not even from the ones who said they'd always be there. And it's not because they don't care, it's because they're living their lives just as you should be living yours. After 60, something inside of you starts to shift. Maybe it's a loss, maybe it's the silence, maybe it's the sting of unmet expectations. But here's the truth no one tells you. The pain of waiting is far greater than the effort it takes to build something of your own. This is not a speech about bitterness. This is about courage. The courage to stop hoping they'll show up in the way you need and start showing up for yourself. It's about choosing clarity over guilt, self-respect over obligation, and peace over performance. We've been conditioned to think that family is forever, that blood guarantees loyalty, that aging means becoming dependent. But what if aging was the doorway to something richer? Independence without apology. You're not too old, you're not too late, you're just on time to build your life around foundations that don't collapse when people disappear. You deserve to feel strong, safe, and sovereign, not because someone gave you permission, but because you finally stopped waiting. There's a quiet kind of power that emerges when you no longer feel the need to defend your peace. And it often arrives later in life when you've been burned enough times, stretched too thin, and made small for far too long. For many of us, especially in families, boundaries have always come with guilt. We were taught to be polite, to stay connected no matter how uncomfortable it felt, to answer every call, show up to every gathering, and tolerate behavior that chipped away at our spirit. We feared being called selfish, dramatic, difficult, or disrespectful. So we kept explaining ourselves, trying to justify why we needed space, time, silence, or simply respect. But here's what you learn after 60. Your peace is not up for negotiation, not anymore. You've earned the right to protect your heart without sending anyone a memo. You can say no without a footnote. You can decline the dinner, the phone call, the argument, the expectation without offering a single excuse. You are not required to stay emotionally available to people who constantly dismiss your boundaries and call it love. You're not required to entertain guilt trips disguised as tradition, and you are absolutely not required to let family, biological or chosen, treat your presence as something they're entitled to rather than something that is earned. A real boundary isn't about controlling someone else's behavior, it's about protecting your own energy. And you don't need to shout, argue, or convince anyone. A boundary can be as simple as not replying, as calm as not showing up, as quiet as removing access without drama. You don't owe an explanation for why you no longer feel safe. You don't owe a justification for choosing peace over obligation. You are not cruel for stepping back. You are wise. You are finally showing yourself the respect you've given away for decades. Boundaries without explanation don't mean you're cold, they mean you're clear. They're a declaration, I will not abandon myself to keep you comfortable anymore. That kind of clarity doesn't just protect you, it teaches the next generation how to live with dignity. After 60, one of the most powerful shifts you can make is learning to trust yourself. Not quietly, not cautiously, but fully. It's the kind of trust that doesn't waver when someone questions your decisions. It doesn't shrink when others disapprove. It doesn't look around the room for validation before taking a step forward. Most of us grew up in systems, families, cultures, religions, where obedience was praised and self-trust was seen as rebellion. We were taught to second-guess our instincts, defer to authority, and seek approval before making choices. Even as adults, we waited for someone to say, "You're right," waited for someone to say, "It's okay to do that," waited for someone to see our worth before we believed in it ourselves. But now, after all you've lived through, self-trust must become non-negotiable. Self-trust means listening to your own voice over the noise. It means knowing what's right for you, even if it makes no sense to your family, your friends, or the people who think they know you. It means no longer waiting for someone to say you deserve better, because you already know you do. It's trusting yourself enough to walk away from conversations that leave you feeling small. Trusting yourself enough to spend money on your well-being, even if others call it selfish. trusting yourself enough to start something new at 61 or 75, even if no one claps or notices. This kind of self-trust isn't loud or arrogant. It's steady. It's the quiet confidence that says, I don't need to explain this. I know it's right. I don't need anyone's blessing. I already gave myself permission. I've spent enough years asking, pleasing, waiting. I choose me now. And when that inner voice begins to grow louder than the doubt around you, you'll realize you were never too late. You were just waiting for your own courage to arrive. By the time you reach 60, you've likely learned the hard way. Not all relationships are meant to be held on to. Some connections, no matter how long they've been in your life or how deep the bloodline, do more damage than good. And the greatest gift you can give yourself in this season is discernment. The wisdom to know who feeds your soul and who quietly starves it. This isn't about bitterness. It's about self-respect. It's about finally admitting what you felt for years. Some relationships leave you emotionally exhausted, mentally second-guessing, and spiritually empty. You hang up the phone drained. You leave the gathering feeling invisible. You show up out of obligation, not desire. That is not love. That is not connection. That is emotional erosion, and it has no place in your life moving forward. So relationships that nourish don't demand explanations for your growth. They celebrate it. They don't make you feel guilty for having boundaries. They respect them. They don't weaponize your vulnerabilities. They hold them with care. These are the people who see you not just out of duty, but because they genuinely want to. And nourishing relationships don't have to be many. After 60, it's not about having a large circle. It's about having a few genuine souls who meet you in truth, not in performance. Friends who ask how you really are. Companions who don't drain you with drama, competition, or judgment, but who bring ease, laughter, stillness, and sincerity. Sometimes those people aren't family, and that's okay. Sometimes they're new, and that's beautiful. You're allowed to outgrow the people who once felt safe. You're allowed to open your heart to strangers who become soul family. You're allowed to rebuild your circle based not on shared history, but on shared healing. This is your time to release the people who only show up when they need something. The ones who treat your kindness like currency, your time like a transaction, your love like a burden. You are not a lifeline for those who refuse to swim. You are not a vessel for other people's emotional debts. You are here to give and receive, not just give until you break. So ask yourself, does this connection bring peace or pressure? Do I feel heard or just tolerated? Am I shrinking to fit this relationship or expanding to meet it? Your answers will tell you everything. Let the rest go, not with rage, but with reverence. You are allowed to love people from afar. You are allowed to honor your heart. And you are allowed to create a life surrounded by energy that heals, not harms. You deserve relationships that nourish you deeply, not ones that cost you your peace to maintain. There's something powerful about reaching an age where you stop spending your energy and your money to be liked, needed, or approved of. Financial clarity, especially after 60, is not just about numbers. It's about boundaries, priorities, and freedom. It's about saying, I am no longer the emotional or financial safety net for everyone else's chaos. For too long, many people, especially in families, have treated your financial generosity like an obligation, not a gift. You've bailed out adult children who refuse to grow up. You've said yes to things that drained you, not because you wanted to, but because you didn't want to be seen as selfish. You've poured from your savings, your retirement, your emotional reserves, hoping it would buy connection, gratitude, or peace. But here's the truth. Financial peace cannot coexist with guilt-based spending, and love should never require a receipt. After 60, your money should start working for you, for your stability, for your rest, for your joy, for your future. You've earned it through years of sacrifice, labor, endurance, and giving. And now it's time for your finances to reflect your values, not your guilt. Financial clarity means asking bold questions without shame. Can I afford this without compromising my well-being? Am I giving out of love or out of pressure? Do I feel peace after this financial decision, or do I feel resentment and fear? You are not required to underwrite someone else's irresponsibility, no matter how close they are to you, especially if that generosity robs you of your own security. This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming conscious. And it's not just about giving, it's about spending too. After 60, financial clarity invites you to spend with joy, not apology. Take that trip, buy yourself comfort, invest in your health. Take that clarity is not selfishness, it's self-respect. And above all, you deserve to feel secure, supported, and sovereign without buying your worth or proving your loyalty through your wallet. When we think of leaving a legacy, we often think of material things, property, heirlooms, money, or a family name. But what if the most powerful legacy you could leave isn't something that can be held in the hand, but something that frees the heart? Emotional freedom after 60 is not just a personal victory, it's a generational gift. For decades, many of us lived under emotional weight that wasn't ours. We carried shame we didn't earn. We stayed silent to keep the peace. We tolerated mistreatment because we didn't want to rock the boat. We performed for love, earned our worth through sacrifice, and wore guilt like a second skin. But eventually you reach a point where the cost of emotional confinement becomes too high, where your spirit whispers, it's time to stop surviving and start living. And that's what emotional freedom is. It's no longer betraying your truth to keep others comfortable. It's no longer managing everyone's reactions just to avoid conflict. It's no longer shrinking, softening, or silencing who you are to fit inside someone else's idea of you. Emotional freedom means you say what needs to be said even if your voice shakes. It means you choose peace over performance. It means you make space for joy without apology, regret, or needing it to be earned. And the beauty of choosing this freedom now, after 60, is that it gives others permission to do the same. It says to the younger generations watching, you don't have to wait your whole life to feel this free. You can speak up, say no, walk away, take space without guilt. You're allowed to choose yourself without explanation. That is a legacy, not the house, not the money, but the healing. A legacy of emotional freedom means you've stopped handing down pain that was handed to you. It means the cycle ends with you, not with resentment, but with radical self-awareness and grace. Imagine your grandchildren growing up watching a version of you that wasn't afraid to rest, to laugh, to be misunderstood, to walk alone, to be joyful without justification. Imagine them learning from your life that freedom isn't a reward for pleasing others. It's a right you claim when you finally believe you are enough. After 60, you don't need to prove your worth. You need to live it. And that is how you leave a mark that doesn't fade, a legacy of emotional liberation, born not from perfection, but from the decision to stop waiting for others to change and to instead free yourself. One of the most beautiful transformations after 60 is this. You stop chasing applause and start following alignment. For so long, many of us lived in service to external validation. We worked hard to be good parents, good partners, good siblings, good children, hoping someone would notice, hoping someone would say, you did a good job. We wore ourselves out giving, fixing, proving, waiting for recognition that often never came, or when it did, felt hollow and late. All the work that we did, but something shifts with age, and with that shift comes freedom. The freedom to ask, what would I do if no one clapped? What would I create or say or pursue if I didn't need anyone to be impressed? That's where true purpose begins, not in being seen, but in being true. Purpose after 60 isn't about chasing significance, it's about meaning. Deep soul level meaning that fills you, whether or not anyone ever knows about it. It might be found in tending a garden, volunteering quietly, mentoring someone who never had guidance, painting for no one but yourself, or writing the story you wish someone had written for you. The beauty of purpose in this stage of life is that it's finally for you. Not to win a parent's approval, not to impress a child, not to prove your worth, but because you are still here. And that means your life still has rhythm, voice, color, value. And sometimes your purpose is quiet. It doesn't need a platform. It doesn't have an audience, but it heals you, softens you, awakens you. You no longer need a social media post to validate your wisdom. You don't need anyone to label your contributions as inspiring. You are not a brand. You are not a role. You are a whole human being worthy of purpose simply because you exist. And when your purpose is not dependent on praise, you become unshakable, because whether people acknowledge you or not, you know who you are, you know your heart, you know what you're here to give, and you give it freely. That is the deepest kind of purpose, the kind that nourishes you first, the kind that creates ripples without needing recognition, the kind that keeps growing long after applause fades. You are not too old to create something beautiful. You are not too late to matter. And you certainly do not need permission to start walking in your purpose, quietly, boldly, peacefully. Let them wonder what drives you. Let them misunderstand. Let them overlook you. Your joy is not up for debate. Your purpose doesn't need a podium. It just needs you showing up day by day for what sets your soul alight. You spent decades being everything for everyone, holding it all together, showing up even when you were tired, loving people who didn't always love you back the way you needed. You waited for the phone call. You waited for the appreciation. You waited for someone in your family to finally see you, understand you, care for you the way you cared for them. But at some point, around 60, maybe a little before or after, you realize waiting is a trap that keeps you from living. This next chapter isn't about blame. It's not about cutting people off in anger. It's about releasing expectations that have been quietly wounding you for years. It's about redirecting the love, attention, and energy you've poured outward and finally pouring it inward where it has always belonged. You're not giving up on family. You're giving up on the fantasy that your healing will come from people who haven't done their own. You're stepping into a new kind of strength, one that doesn't need to be rescued, validated, or pitied. You are building a life on foundations that cannot be shaken. A self-trust that doesn't wait for approval. Boundaries that require no explanation. Relationships that feed your soul. Money that serves your peace. Purpose that doesn't beg for praise. And a legacy of emotional freedom that breaks generational chains. You are not too old to begin again. In fact, this might be the first time you're building for you. So stop waiting, start choosing. Not because your family failed you, but because you finally refused to fail yourself. This is your time, not to prove anything, not to fix everything, but to live fully, freely, and on your terms.